Thanks for tuning into our podcast. We love having you here, and it's our mission to bring you all the latest and greatest tips, skills, and know-how to make you the best that you can be. We know that you have it in you, and we're going to show you how. Now, let's get started.
On the show once again, this is Omobola Stephen, your host on Live Knowledge by Omobola Stephen. Remember, Live Knowledge by Omobola Stephen is a self-improvement and personal development podcast, occasioning experts and professionals who are adept in these topics. Now, I also need to let you know that personal development is a lifelong process and it's something that we need to embrace in order to be who destiny has made us to be. We must constantly improve on ourselves. Today, I have Henry Svec, who is a business mentor for young startup, a podcast host, and also a writer. Hi, Henry. Welcome to the show.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Erin, for joining me on the show. Thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to having the discussion, talking about value investment, and because this is what you focus on, and also about the honeybee investment. First of all, Erin, what can my audience learn about value investing? So I need you to tell me a bit about your journey into honeybee investment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the value of something is something we've had a lot of discussions about over time, whether it be the value of a house or the value of, when you look at price versus value, sometimes we confuse those things. And one thing that the honeybees taught me really is the value of their time and energy. And honey is money for them. So how they value that time and that energy is almost instinctual. It's without emotion. You know how when we buy something, whether it's something in a store or we're buying a stock or we're buying a building, there's a great deal of emotion and feelings. And people get afraid when prices drop and so on. But a true value investor, as the honeybees are, take action based not on emotions, but on the facts of what they know. And that gives you strength and power when at times it seems that things are getting out of hand one way or the other. So I think for a value investment, for me, it has to produce income for you. So by buying that asset, it's going to bring you some kind of monthly income or regular income. And you have bought it for a price that's significantly below what you think it's worth.
Absolutely. I'd like you to tell me more about your honeybee investment.
Sure. So with the idea of the honeybees, when we converted our farm, we took our 50-acre farm, we converted it back over to nature and a honeybee sanctuary. And because I wanted to learn more about honeybees. I had a bit of an experience as a child. And there was a great deal going on with honeybees in North America and around the world about they're not surviving very well. So I thought, well, let's figure this out a little bit. And so we brought honeybees onto the farm. And just like most businesses, last year we lost all our honeybees. Every beehive didn't make it through the winter. And that was my fault. I learned that on the one hand, you can do too much to help the honeybees, and on the other hand, you cannot do enough. So as a servant beekeeper, I've learned that, you know, we have a job to try to make it, plant the right flowers, plant the right habitat, bring in the right genetics, and then give them a chance to be successful, which I didn't do before. And while we're watching this, and I'm also a value investor. So while you watch the bees, you realize very quickly the patterns and rules that they have to survive are similar rules to successful investors. And that's how the book came about, where my wife and I looked at it and said, this is, and the other added piece the bees have that most don't is the environmental piece. And we call that being, you know, they're really accidental with their environment, positive things that bees do. They don't purposely go out and try to make the world a better place. It's more accidental. So when they go out and pollinate a flower, they're going out to get nectar and pollen, and they happen to pollinate a flower accidentally, which then makes more flowers the next year and makes it better for the next generation of bees and insects and wildlife. So it's a business. If we were to call the collection of honey a business, or nectar, sorry, to make honey, the bees go out and collect that while they're doing good things for the environment. And that's when you bring it back into the business and value investing. If you can find a company that's in the business of doing their business, and I use a few examples in the book, who also happen to have an environmental focus that makes those investments better, that's an incredible value investment. And we do see more and more of that, but they're investments for the purpose of being an investment. Most of the ones that are done strictly for the environment fail because the businesses aren't ready yet and they're not based on a business model. So what we learned from the honeybees is you first have to survive. Survival is the most important thing. And I think sometimes as value investors, we forget that. We're always concerned about how much money we can make on an investment, what's the return, when in fact we should be looking at survival, which today is pretty important.
All right. Now, Henry, I understand that you have an honeybee investment going on well for you. I'd like us to talk about some of the importance of honeybee, right, to health and also to human life. You got any experience or personal insight you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Are you talking about the specific investments that I mentioned in the book, or are you talking sort of general life kind of lessons?
Yes, I want us to focus mainly on the health and on human life.
What I've been so enriched by, like, I watch my bees all the time. Right now we have a 24/7 webcam. So just before we got on, in fact, I just had to turn it off because it was getting noisy. I have a camera right in front of a hive. I can watch my bees 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and learn from them. It's about 100 yards here from my house. And what I've learned, there's so much of it. First, the one thing that, well, I shouldn't say one, but one of the things that really impresses me is that every 15 minutes, 40,000 bees know the status of the queen in the hive. They communicate to 40,000 bees the status of their leader every 15 minutes. So let's think about this for a minute. Let's take a step back. How likely is that to happen in any industry, company, or government you know, where that immediate feedback is there as to how they're doing? Because if the queen isn't okay, they have to take immediate action. They have to immediately try to work to create a new queen. And we won't go into all those details I talk about in the book, but the point of that is the immediate feedback that we need to be successful as investors and in life. We're always worried. When we worry about the past, it causes a lot of issues that we can't change because the past we can't go back and fix. When we think about the future and get worried about it, we get anxious. We worry about this or that. We don't know if it's going to happen. But what we learn from the honeybees is they are focused on right now. Right now, do we know how we are doing, how we're doing in our families, how we're doing in our careers? Forget tomorrow, because we may not have tomorrow. We can't do anything about yesterday. But are we doing everything we can right now? And that's probably the most important life lesson I've learned, on top of a couple that have to do with acting without emotion. You know, every September and October, the honeybees drag out the drones here in Canada where it's cold. The drones, they feel, have no longer a purpose and they eat too much food, so they kill them all. All the drones are dragged out and have no more value. Now that's a pretty brutal way to live. But the brutality and the toughness of what they have to do to survive becomes sort of a wake-up call into how we can get sort of, you know, we go to the grocery store and we can't find a certain product and we complain about the supply chain or whatever it might be here in North America. When you look at nature, and nature reacts so quickly and in such a tough way, that we really need to appreciate. And that goes back to the ideal of being grateful every day to what we have. And I've learned that from the honeybees as well, the importance of gratitude to start your day. Before you do anything else, gratitude is so important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Henry Svec, for that insight. Talking about investment once again, what would you consider as your most painful investment, Mr. You ever had?
Well, I've had a lot of failures. I just had a recent failure where I don't think a startup I backed is going to make it. And it's very frustrating for me because it's not because of the product or service, it's because the lack of work ethic and the willingness of the founders to take some kind of, it's okay if people don't do what you say, but they should at least process it and listen before they throw it in the garbage. And that's a frustration with a startup. But my personal one was, of course, the ice cream. I call it the ice cream company, where I decided that I was going to start a company to make ice cream. Here on the farm, before we converted it to nature, it was a fruit farm. So we grew cherries and mainly cherries, but some other fruits that when you mix with products, you can make a really good ice cream. So I thought, wouldn't that be great to start a business to make ice cream? So we expanded quickly, bought the equipment, but I had no idea what I was doing. I probably broke every rule to start a business. I had no mentoring, but it was my fault. I had to own all that. It was 22% interest rates at the time. I didn't plan things. I didn't even read some of the leases. I was so happy to get into these amazing malls. And the concept was basically we made ice cream in every store. So if you went to our store, you would eat the ice cream that we made that day from whatever fruit was the best to make ice cream out of, which sounds like a really great idea. But I live in Canada where it gets to be minus 30 degrees Celsius sometimes. And so for 6 months, people aren't really thinking about eating ice cream. They'd like some hot chocolate or coffee, but they don't want any ice cream. So I pretty much made every mistake possible in that first business. Now, the good news is when you make a mistake like that, you have two choices. You can learn from it, and it's very painful. We're talking years to recover. Negotiating with banks, bad landlords, didn't declare bankruptcy, probably should have, but I didn't. I worked through everything, borrowed money from left and right, and you always remember the people who were there to support you. Now this has been this would have been about 30 years ago. But I still remember those meetings like they were yesterday at a bank, and they would sit and shake their head and say, no, we don't think you're good for it. We don't think you can't get any loans from us. And so when you sit in those environments, and probably it was good for me they said no, because I had to find other ways to get through it, which negotiate tougher and all of that. But at the time, and remember, I was married, we had 3 young children. I had 5 jobs at the time because I couldn't, just to pay bills. So I had 2 full-time jobs and 3 part-time jobs at the same time. And I remember I had graduated Michigan State, and I was standing giving a lecture, and I was giving a wrong lecture for the wrong city. That's how confused I was. And someone looked at me, put up their hand. These were adult students in grad school. She puts up her hand. She said, I think you got the wrong class. So I realized that, I had a family, and I'm very fortunate to have an amazing wife who's supportive. We've been together 43 years. She's smarter than I am, obviously smarter and more intelligent, tougher, and better looking. So I really married up. So I was lucky. And that was part of getting through this. You have to have a supportive partner or a team around you that supports you. And that's, I think, probably, we sit back now in hindsight, say, oh, if I hadn't done the ice cream company thing, but, I think I needed that experience. I call it my MBA, whatever that means.
So now, how do someone know if they are smart with money? I know you've got a lot of experience about money.
I don't know about experience. Go ahead. What did you want me to talk about? Sorry.
Yes. Now, so I would like you to just show my audience how they can know if they are smart with their money. Talking about money and financial intelligence.
I think and that's a great question. I think for me, it's very simple. For me, it's not worrying about it. So if you go in a grocery store, to me, it always gets back to food. I don't know why. Maybe I like to eat and I do cook, but the rule I used to have is if I can go in the grocery store in January, which is really cold here, and buy raspberries from California and not worry about how much they cost, then I'm doing okay. That was it. I don't need much. And I've never lived, my wife and I have always lived sort of frugally because it doesn't seem right. Like, I think that for me, it's not having anxiety about money, not thinking about it, not worrying about it. In the book, we talk about a 6-month, you should have 6 months, if you can, of money in the bank so that you can live should anything happen. Should you get laid off? Should you not get money from your business? I think being smart with your money is also about being smart with it, which we talk about in the book, because we wrote the book for young people and also people who have not had a lot of experience in handling their own finances. And I really believe people need to take care of that. They need to take care of their finances and their money, like the bees take care of their honey. The bees don't hand that off to anybody else. Can you imagine going to a group of wasps and saying, you guys take care of the honey, we'll come back in October and when we need it and we'll get the honey? There won't be any. So trying to be more educated about it, taking the time to think about it and read about it. But to me, I think it's about not having anxiety about money and not having to think about it.
Oh, really? And now you're talking about not having to think about money. Is it possible at this time that we can think about money, right?
How do you mean? Sorry, give it away?
Yes, so we can help but think about money, especially in these trying times that we have.
It depends.
Maybe
You know,
that.
I learned this in my practice. Excuse me. I work with people from all types of income sources. People who worried about money, who made the minimum wage, who were service industry people, and people who worried about money, who made millions of dollars a year. And I remember thinking to myself, it doesn't really seem to matter, because it seems when a lot of people make money, they just increase their spending to equal that money coming in. And that's why when we looked at the book, we said, well, one of the things you can do that we've always believed in is spend less than you earn. If we just started with that, regardless of how much you make, if you can spend less than you earn, and people say to me, especially, I'm not sure what city you're coming from today, but I'm about 2 hours from Toronto. And people will say to me, well, in Toronto, you have to pay $1 million for a house. And as I talk about in the book, so what I say to them is, you need to move. Don't live in Toronto. I can tell you where you can buy a house for $150,000 a year. You can buy a duplex for $220,000, rent out half and live free. You're not going to live in Toronto. In fact, you'll have to live in a different province, but you can move. My parents moved for different reasons from when they were being prosecuted and persecuted for their beliefs in the Czech Republic. They moved. They didn't have a choice. They moved. So I think sometimes we don't see the possibilities because we put ourselves in this sort of, I don't want to say a box. Do you know what I'm trying to say? We kind of we put restrictions on what we can or can't do, as opposed to looking at Canada where we're free to move. No one tells us we have to move here or there. And I'm sure it's the same in America. And I'm sure it's the same. What city are you coming from today?
All right. Thank you once again, Henry, for that insight. Rounding up, I'd like us to talk about land banking, which is something that you're involved in. You said that it helps you sleep at night. Now, my audience like to know, is this something that we need to start considering in these dynamic times that we are in now? I'd like you to talk about the good side of land banking and also the bad side.
So the good side, I mean, land banking, again, was another just a luck thing. So when Biden won the election, in America, and Trudeau here in Canada was talking about carbon offsets, we started looking at where in the world in Canada can we buy land that has forest and natural and is also close to the ocean. We were able to accumulate, I'm not sure, 700-800 acres of land that's all able to be developed, but it's also land that is full of trees and wildlife and is just beautiful, and near the ocean and some on the ocean. And so the idea being that when you land bank, you buy that land, but you have no intention of probably ever doing anything with it. In our case, we developed some lots that we could sell if we wanted to. The value, when we purchased those properties, some of them were for sale for more than 5 years. No one wanted them. Okay, but they were beautiful. I couldn't understand why. I'll give you one example. We purchased a 39-acre parcel that had been for sale for 3 years, I think, and they wanted $65,000 for it, and we purchased it for 50 something, and we turned it into 9 lots. So we now have 9 oceanside lots where people can build a house on, from 10 acres down to, I believe the smallest would be 2-acre lots. Beautiful spot with deeded ocean access. And it was just because we got lucky, and that's what was going on in that South Shore area. So I think we started looking at land banking because first it was for carbon offsets. Someday there may be a business with that. But for right now, I sleep at night with land because I know whatever happens in the world, I could always go cut a tree down. I could sell a piece of lumber. I could get a deer or a rabbit. I could survive. I know that sounds very weird today, and it's land. Land never, to me, it's such a value that I think when you have a little bit of that, it helps with your ability to sleep at night and be, smart with your money, because you have that other asset and you diversify. Worst comes to worst, I can put a tiny house on one of these properties and I could live there. that's kind of why. Now, the downside to it is you need to be able to have the resources to purchase the land, because you don't want to be paying interest on a loan when the land doesn't produce any income, because we're not going to actively cut trees down to sell lumber. We're not going to do all those things. We're just going to leave it. And there's something, you know how sometimes, you know, we all have giving back programs where you write checks to programs, or you do things to give back. There's something about the balance of, maybe it's from the honeybees, when things are kind of balanced, it all works out. So rather than a clear cut advantage to it, I don't know what the advantage to land banking, it just made sense.
Anyway, any exciting news you'd like to share with my audience?
Anything exciting?
Absolutely. Or have any projects you'd like to share?
Yeah, we you know, a couple of real, we're looking at developing a tiny house community on one of these projects where people can live in a tiny home. They can purchase the home, and we have rooftop balconies. We have two, we're just playing around the idea with, we have them on site on the actual property. And so you can climb up to the top and you actually sit on your rooftop balcony, and you can look at the ocean and the wildlife. And I call it space. I think after COVID and the pandemic, I think we all craved space. And so these are 1.5 to 4 acre lots full of trees, the ocean, and you've got this tiny house, beautiful tiny house, where economically you can live and just have an amazing time. So that's pretty exciting. I find that very exciting. I find being a grandfather exciting, just having great grandkids and seeing my children develop into amazing, responsible adults. I'm so proud of our children. And so, you know, I think it's a phase of life which I really am grateful for. I just feel like at this stage, there's so much that we can do. And I think I don't understand what retirement, people get mad at me sometimes. Well, you're supposed to be retired. Why are you? No, I'm just doing a different career. I'm just doing a different career. And that's how I kind of see it. So that gets me excited. I get up you know, having this call with you was excited. I did some research background, listened to your podcast. I thought this is going to be fun. Obviously we've never met and talked, and I've grown from this. So it's good.
Thank you once again, Erin, for that brilliant information you shared to us, and also for the feedback. I'm humbled by that. Any parting word you'd like to share with my audience?
I think we have to, a couple of things. I think one of the things we have to realize, there's this randomness to investing in life that we try to attribute to some skill we have or bad luck. And some of it's just bad luck or good luck. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's random. And it's very important in anything you do, I think, to always consider how much of what just happened was random, or how much am I responsible for? Because you can do everything right, and a relationship doesn't work out, or a business doesn't work out. Now, in our business, my business example, I did everything wrong, and it didn't work out. So I have to own 100% of that. But there's also luck involved when you do well. And so it's important, I think, for young people to realize, and old, that, you know, we're always learning. And I'll leave you with my final question I ask everybody. And some people hate this question, but I would say, if this is your area of expertise, whatever it may be, and 100% means you are the best at this job on the planet, where do you think you are 0 to 100%? And I have to say, the saddest thing I hear is when young people coming out of school will say, I know 90% of everything I need to know to do this job. And they're like 23. And I'm working on 15% after 30 years. And I go, either you folks are really smart, or I'm really dumb, because I don't understand. And I think and then the other part, when I do tell them that I'm only at 20%, they look at me and say, yeah, but I went to a really good school. Oh man, how are you going to learn if you're 24 and you think you know everything? How are you going to learn? What are you going to do for the next 55, 60 years of your life? So I think it's important to be humble and to also accept the randomness of life. And we just got lucky. Some of us got lucky because we were born, or our parents pulled us into a country where we don't have to worry about food and water today.
Thank you, Erin, for that insight, and also for the inspiration. Erin, I would like you to share your website to my audience and your social media platforms, so we get to know much about you and what you do.
That'd be great. Yeah, just go to wildflowerbeefarm.com and you can watch our bees. We have free coloring books for kids there about different things you can do. Teachers can download lesson plans if you're homeschooling or you're part of a school. That's all free. We hired a teacher to do that. So we're always working to make, you know, our world open to people, and it's a way of giving back because we're just fortunate, I think.
Absolutely. It's really been a great time having you, Henry Svec, on the show today, talking about value investing. Now, Henry Svec is a business mentor for young startups, a podcast host also, and also a writer. I wish you best of luck in all the projects that you have going forward.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
All right. Now, if you would like to catch up with any missed episodes of Lively by Omobola Stephen, you can do so on any cross promotion platforms, on any distribution platforms you bump into, and do have an amazing time. Perhaps you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can send a mail to me at omobolastephen@outlook.com. I'll be looking forward to your mail, and we can have a great time together moving forward to be the change that the world is waiting for. Till I come your way, I need you to be good. Talk to you soon.